Today we're with Judge Binford. You're the presiding judge for Houston and Henry County. We understand that the Chief Justice has announced some major cuts to the judicial system which will affect this circuit. Can you elaborate on those?
Right. The budget proposal that is now pending in the state legislature calls for a 35% budget cut for the Administrative Office of Courts. And of course, the Administrative Office of Courts, or AOC as we call it, is the funding agency for clerk's offices statewide. If that 35% reduction stays in place, that's going to cause a layoff statewide of 265 clerks. Now locally the impact will be 7 clerks out of the 20 being laid off here in Houston County, and that will reduce Mrs. Woodall's staff in the clerk's office to 13 people to handle every division and every courtroom within this courthouse. In Henry County, which is also within our 20th Judicial Circuit here, Mrs. Vickers' office will lose 2 of the 5 employees there, leaving her with 3 employees to run her court system.
Explain a little bit about the clerk's office and how vital they are to the system of everybody that uses the system.
Every pleading and every motion that comes into the courthouse has to be filed in through the clerk's office. In other words, you can't file a pleading or a motion in with a judge. Everything has to be filed in with the clerk's office, and they have to make a record of it. Once it is filed in, then it's transmitted either in a hard copy paper form to the judge, or sometimes it's transmitted electronically to the judge by way of the electronic e-filing system that we're using now in the court system statewide. But everything has to be filed, and then every order that a judge signs has to also be filed in the clerk's office. And you can imagine that there's a tremendous number of orders and paper that is filed in this building every single day. You have major filings, for example, in civil actions involving large sums of money or where property is in dispute. Then also you have a great deal, just a massive amount of filings in the district court involving small claims. Look at traffic court, for example, on the district criminal side. Imagine the traffic complaints that are filed in. Every time a judge signs an order in a traffic case, that's an order that has to be filed and recorded in the clerk's office. So there's just a tremendous amount of work that they do just moving the paper that has to be moved to make the court system go. And then they also assist in court. For example, every time I'm in court striking a jury, I have a clerk with me, and my clerk, who is Rosalind Jones, actually sits at the table with the attorneys, and she strikes the juries with the attorneys. She swears the jury in when we do the voir dire examination to qualify them to sit on the jury that day. She does the oath to the jury after the jury is selected and put in the box. There's a lot of things that they are doing for us now that they may not be able to do, or may not be able to do in a timely fashion if these budget cuts go through as they currently stand.
This past week, one of the circuit judges tried a capital murder case. Is there a lot of volume of paperwork and file and time restraints in those type cases that the clerk has to stay on top of?
The capital cases are a little more intensive time-wise and paperwork-wise because of the nature of the case. But after the initial discovery process is through, there's probably not that much additional work for the clerk. But the criminal work overall is very significant. We have 5 circuit judges here running courts every opportunity we have. I know Judge Conaway, for example, last week was in a capital murder trial all week. I was trying theft cases, 36 counts of theft cases, and a robbery case that we went into Friday on. The other judges were busy as well last week. That is just a tremendous turnover of paperwork that is generated in those kinds of cases. The big problem with these layoffs and how it impacts the criminal court system is just the delay in getting to trial. And it's really not a layoff issue so much, or a clerk's issue so much. It's just a budget issue. We're told, for example, that we have to reduce our number of criminal jury terms by 1/4, and we've done that. So instead of running, 6 terms or 5 terms, for example, per 6 months. We're down to running only 4. That means that it's harder to get cases to trial. If you're in jail, you're not able to make your bond, you're over there at the Houston County Jail. We're paying over $80 per day out of the county treasury to house and feed an inmate at the county jail. And this budget cut, as it is existing right now, is only going to slow that down. All of the judges have worked real hard over the past couple of years to try to get that jail back locked down. For example, we give priority, and we ought to give priority to cases where defendants are in custody and they're unable to make their bond. But it's hard to continue to do that. It's hard to maintain that level of attention to that if you are limited in the number of trials that you can have. We have other competing considerations. For example, you have to take into consideration the age of a case. If a case is a 2008 case and has not gone to trial, even though that defendant in that 2008 case may not be in jail, that 2008 case may well take precedence over a 2010 case or a 2011 case where a defendant is in jail. You have cases where defendants may have filed a motion for speedy trial. We are under the gun on those kinds of cases. We've got to go ahead and try to resolve those cases, even though a defendant may not be in the county jail who has filed that motion. Then you have cases involving children and, let's say, sex abuse cases. One thing that I've always tried to do is get those cases moved up on the docket and give those cases a higher priority, even though the defendant in those cases may not be in jail. That's just the kind of case that, for everybody's benefit, needs to be brought to trial and resolved as quickly as possible. So you have competing considerations, and if we're limited in those trial terms, that's going to hurt us in our ability to get people out of the jail and get them to trial. In felony cases, the jail is not a destination point. Some people think it is, but in felony cases, the jail is only a holding facility. That's where you hold people who are unable to make bond until such time as their cases can go to a circuit judge and a jury for trial. So that's going to hurt us in a lot of ways.
What do you look as the answer other than money?
I don't know if there really is an answer. The Chief Justice said yesterday that she had made a bargain or a deal with the governor's finance director, whereby she agreed to support an indigent defense bill that was pending in the legislature in return for the governor's pledge to only cut the court system by 10%. And what has happened is, although the governor agreed to that, members of the legislature, or certain members of the legislature, were not agreeable to that, and apparently certain members of the legislature felt that the court system ought to be cut more than 10%, and that's leaving us with that 35% cut right now. But that's a good question. In fact, the question was asked yesterday, if money is put back into the court system, then where is that money going to come from? And no one really had an answer to that question as of yesterday. One possible solution and one possible answer was that tobacco tax, but there is such opposition statewide and in the legislature to increase taxes in any form right now that the tobacco tax was basically dead on arrival. It hardly ever stood a chance. The state employee furlough bill, that was another possibility where employees statewide would be furloughed for maybe 2 days a month or 4 days a month. They would not be paid for those days they were furloughed, but they would not be required to work those days either. And that would result hopefully in some substantial savings to the state that could be applied to shortages and make up the AOC budget. But that bill apparently is dead or dying in the legislature. So those were the two great hopes, to fund the court system at the level that they hoped to fund it at. But apparently that's not going to happen. But essentially that question yesterday was unanswered. If you don't fund AOC, or if you want to fund AOC at the level it's asking for funding, then where's that money going to come from? And there's no answer to that. Do you take it from the Department of Mental Health? Do you take it from the Department of Public Safety? Do you take troopers off the street? Do you take away services that the Department of Human Resources is providing to citizens of the state? Do you slow child collection procedures with the Department of Human Resources by taking money away from them? Somebody is going to be hurt somewhere, no matter how you look at it. Right now there's a general perception, at least among people involved in the court system, that the court system is probably hurting a little more than they ought to, and it's hurting to the point where they cannot really run the court system in the way that it ought to be run and in the way that the public expects it to be run and has a right to expect it to be run. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is that the court system is not an agency of the state. We're not like the Department of Public Safety or the Department of Forensic Sciences or the Department of Mental Health. We are a separate and equal branch of the government. There's the executive branch, the governor, the legislative branch, which is the legislature, and then the judicial branch, which is our court system statewide, not just the Supreme Court and the appellate courts, but the state trial courts throughout the state. We are a separate but equal branch of the government, but there's a general feeling now that we're not being treated as such, that we are treated more as an agency that has to suffer these funding cuts and not as a branch of the government. But it's a critical situation. You don't want to cry wolf unnecessarily so, and I think anytime anyone's budget is cut, people are going to say that it's devastating. They can't go on without it. But we've already been cut. The clerk's office was cut several years back. They never got those employees back. I think there's some statistics put out yesterday or today by the Chief Justice that show those previous cuts. People are already operating at staffing levels that are far below what they ought to be operating at, and now you're cutting more. It's to the point now where the wolf is not at the door. The wolf has opened the door and he's in the living room. It is tough out there. And we've already lost the front end staff of juvenile court services. Every administrative support person, every secretary, every staff position out there is gone now because of layoffs. There is nowhere else to go. No one else you can lay off if you're going to run the court system.
In Houston County, shows the staffing level for the clerk's office should be 29. She's operating at 20 and fixing to lose 7.
About to go down to 13, 14 if you count Mrs. Woodall, and you do count her because she works just as hard as her clerks do. And if you look at those numbers, every office in the state is dealing with that. There might be 1 or 2 isolated, very rural counties where they may be operating at 2 people, which is 100% of their staffing requirements. But everybody, as you can see by looking at that list that the Chief Justice has released, is going to be hurting statewide.
How soon will these people lose their jobs?
A little unclear. I think the plan is the layoffs will take effect October 1st. I've heard the date September 1st thrown out, but I really don't know. It would be around October 1st, I would imagine.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.